Hello, Reformed Mythologist Nate Morgan Locke here with another episode of Behold the Comets. I am joined as ever by Eleanor.
Hello.
Hello.
That was a weird hello, I'm sorry.
That was a weird hello, but never mind. Before we get into some of the comments themselves that have appeared under Reformed Mythologist videos in the past few weeks, I would like to talk about the Odyssey.
Christopher Nolan Odyssey check-in time.
There's been quite a bit of chat about this because for only the second time, the official Odyssey movie Twitter account has released a piece of information. They released this on December the 23rd, 2024, which really first announced the project. Christopher Nolan's next film, The Odyssey, is a mythic action epic shot across the world using brand new IMAX film technology. The film brings Homer's foundational saga to IMAX film screens for the first time and opens in theaters everywhere on July the 17th, 2026. Now, since then, we've had lots of sort of reports of like who's in it, loads of people, everyone, basically who isn't in it. But they did release on February the 17th this post which said, Matt Damon is Odysseus. A film by Christopher Nolan. The Odyssey movie is in theaters July 17th, 2026. There is a partial Rukan figure of Matt Damon as Odysseus wearing this great big sort of broom classic kind of Greco-Roman sort of helmet thing, which I don't believe is historically accurate. So that information came out, we had that little poster, and then someone made a fan-made poster that I think convinced a few people that it might have been real. Because you never can tell on that internet, can you? And so there was this fan-made poster, which, to the untrained eye, might look like it says, The Odyssey. But to those who know any ancient Greek, says, Tis, because some of the letters which look like English letters are actually quite different, because that Y, which looks like it should be a Y, is actually a psi, almost like Poseidon's trident. That's how I remembered it.
I can imagine the Greek language and history nerds being very upset.
Well, I think they were both upset and also delighted. Because what is more delightful than being able to show what you know? And so I
being
think
able
there was
to
quite
tell
a bit of
someone
excitement.
else that they're wrong.
Yeah, that was interesting. And the other thing that I found really interesting was, this was just a rumor. It's not from the official Twitter account of the official channels. Discussing Film said on February the 11th, the Polyphemus Cyclops scenes in Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey will reportedly be filmed at Nestor's Cave in Greece with a 6x6 meter mechanical anthropomorphic puppet built inside the cave. And I thought, ooh, I've been there. In 2015, we went on a family holiday to the Peloponnese and we stayed in Pylos and we climbed up to Nestor's Cave. And this is a picture of my children at Nestor's Cave, where there will soon be a 6x6 meter mechanical anthropomorphic puppet of Polyphemus. So that was cool. But yeah, so there's some Christopher Nolan news. But it got me thinking about a couple of videos I watched recently, which I'd love to get your take on, which were about the kind of activity of filmmaking. Because I think part of the reason why people are so excited about watching Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey is because they trust him so much as a filmmaker, as someone who takes the craft of it very, very seriously, who's got a very definite vision for what he's trying to do, and who uses practical effects as much as possible, and has a really exciting, kind of a bit old school way of doing it, which feels like it stands out. And so these were the two videos. The first one, which is stuff from a Ghostbusters remake. I say a Ghostbusters remake because I think there's quite a few. So what did you make of that?
Well, I just thought it was a crazy amount of work to do to create something that already exists.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe nowadays it's cheaper to create something digitally than actually spend the money to block off somewhere in New York and film it all on location.
I think you said something about control when wanting everything to be under control.
Yeah, I think it's hard to fault that in film. In everyday life, we can talk about being a control freak, but I think in film, it's actually can be quite important to be a control freak because you want the lighting to be just right. You can't predict the weather. You can't predict who's going to wander by that day. You can't predict the traffic sounds. And so I can understand why it's all done in a big warehouse. But at the same time, it does feel odd to recreate a place that you could just go out and film in.
And I imagine if you're planning to destroy that building later in the film and you're going to have some crazy CGI stuff, it kind of makes sense to have it as this artificial thing. And of course, old film sets, lots of them work just constructed on the soundstage, and that gives you opportunities to control things. It's that slightly sort of uncanny feeling where you're thinking there's something slightly sort of awkward and wrong about this. And of course, you know, the original Ghostbusters. Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Has got kind of some value to it. But these kind of remakes where they're just going on the fact that this is a recognisable IP doesn't seem to have the same aesthetic weight to it that the originals have.
I miss models.
Models?
Yeah, like Blade Runner was all done with models.
Okay.
Rather than CGI, and it's a beautiful film. It's one of my favourite films.
There's something about the practical effects of something like the original Industrial Light and Magic guys who made Star Wars, and then all of that work ends up just being done on computer. And just the sense that, well, the software is able to do it, and there's all sorts of shortcuts and things that you can program in, and you'll provide yourself with tons more freedom in post-production to kind of add things and change things. But that the singular vision of the project, that sense that we're going to get it right and it's going to feel like it's coming together right here.
Yeah, I don't think freedom in the edit is necessarily always a good thing. I think with storytelling and filmmaking, freedom can paralyze you. There can be too many options. Just pick an aesthetic. Just
pick a lane. The second video it reminded me of was a video by a guy whose name I believe is Patrick Tommaso, YouTuber, video essayist, and he's got this great video on why don't movies look like movies anymore. It's been watched 2.3 million times, so you may well have already seen it. But I thought this was really interesting in the sense that he's not just saying, oh, film is better than digital and things always used to be better in the old days, and that there is a kind of tendency towards that for a lot of people, but he's actually really good at showing you the differences. I think what his point is saying the high contrast is what you need. Silhouettes, you need to see the shapes of things. Your eye is being drawn towards a particular thing.
Yeah, he was using Wicked a lot, and Wicked looks very flat.
Where it's just so much going on and you're not really sure what to look at. But yeah, very cool. So do check that out, Patrick Tommaso. I've not watched any of his other videos, but looks like he knows what he's talking about. Right, shall we take a look at some comments?
Yeah, so we got a comment on the House of David trailer, Why I'm Nervous, from films_by_AW, who said, "What a great channel. A perspective I've never thought I'd hear on YouTube. A Christian that wants to make great stories that point to God, not trying to replicate what is already written. Brilliant. Subscribed." Just a thought on the video. 100% with you on this. We need to remember that Jesus himself literally made up engaging stories, or took liberty with stories, to point to a greater meaning. Why are we so afraid of adapting the Bible into contemporary culture/film, as that is essentially what Jesus did?
It's a great comment. Welcome to the channel. Yeah, I was thinking about this looking at a painting by Caravaggio, no less. I think it's called The Calling of St. Matthew. Talking about high contrast, the kind of stuff Patrick Tommaso's into. Interesting thing. Caravaggio has painted the disciples, or this kind of gospel event, in the fashions of his day. You know, the equivalent would be Jesus is wearing jeans and trainers. What are those? But somehow, because it's for 500 years ago, it feels to us like it's still very historic, and so you don't notice it in the same way. It just looks old. But yeah, I think there are ways of doing that which can be really good. I mean, Jesus' parables are also an interesting case study in how unique are the parables as a form of storytelling. So there's something about the parables which is given to us that rather than going, hey guys, how about trying this dynamic out, that he's basically saying, what do you make of this story? What are you getting from what I'm trying to tell you? This is pointing towards something very particular, rather than thinking, okay, now the practice of Christian mission and evangelism is to try to come up with our own kind of parables and things.
So our video after the House of David was our Kisses Break Curses compilation, which didn't do very well.
No, it didn't. There is clearly a curse that needs to be broken, which was on that video. I just don't think we framed it properly, did we?
Yeah, I think the title maybe let us down.
Yeah.
It's sad that it didn't get as much traction as our The Lion King as a Christmas movie video.
Yes,
did.
I think The Lion King as a Christmas movie is slightly more in your face in terms of what you're going to get. You want to kind of disprove the premise when you come to it. So maybe we just needed a better title. Or we could have made a longer thing, and this was one possibility of kind of looking at theology of kisses and how do kisses function in scripture. And there's a lot there. You know, you can go into the most famous kiss in the Bible is obviously Judas's kiss of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, which you might say is the complete opposite of the kisses that we reference in the Kisses Break Curses video.
Or you can go to God breathing life into Adam.
That's right. There is a certain kind of kiss of life that's happening there. Yeah. But also that, the parallel between Jesus in Gethsemane and Adam in Eden is quite strong, and so Judas's kiss is a kind of a breaking of the curse, or it's putting the curse onto Christ as like he is the one who is to receive the death, and then it's through Christ's death, this act of love, true love, is going to be the thing that breaks it.
Anyway, if you haven't seen that video, do go watch it. It's only 3 minutes. It's a fun little video.
It's beautifully edited.
Thank you.
Right.
Then we posted How to Be More Creative, Funny Rant, which was a recording of a rant you did during the January Speak Life Intensive. Mm-hmm. We have a few comments from that.
We had one that said, Philippe Godoy 5342, brilliant, makes me reconsider and redefine who I am as a writer created by God to sub-create to reflect the glory of God. That creation already does perfectly so. That was nice.
We had Brood of Writers, I like that name very much, say, excellent talk, I'm working on developing talks like this, any tips? And then you asked him to tell you a bit more. Then Brood of Writers said, well, I run an Inkling style group and my pitch is, and has always been, be your family's bard. I'm working on a dialogical video essay to answer a lot of the things evangelicals bring up when I make this statement, but I'm having a hard time translating the idea to an in-person talk.
Yes, I mean, I'd be fascinated to know how much experience Brood of Writers has of giving in-person talks, because it's not something that everyone naturally tends towards, and yet we sort of all have to have a go at it at some point, the whole kind of public speaking thing. I think from my point of view, I've been doing this forever, as in that's basically what I enjoy doing most, is speaking to people in person. You know, when I have to talk through a camera, that's fine. So there's a lot that I probably don't even think about doing. But I suppose I would say, like, knowing what it is that you want to say, being really kind of excited about the thing that you want to say, and then wanting the people that you're going to explain it to understand what it is you're trying to say. And that's why I typically don't use a script or anything, because I want to go at the pace of the people I'm speaking to. But an Inkling style group and be your family's bard, they're exciting ideas, yeah.
I really like be your family's bard.
And then here's another one from superfan Scotty Brewer. I first heard a related idea expressed in an interview with Andrew Peterson. We are all made in God's image, which means that we are all co-creators with him. You can be creative as an artist or an entrepreneur or as a father or a farmer. The true limitations on creativity are not what we pretend they are. So that was useful, thinking about creativity broadly and how it applies across many different roles and jobs and things. And then there was a reply from Akila Copeland. I would say be careful with the term co-creators. A lot of the time people use that expression. What they mean is that we have divine power within ourselves to shape reality/spirituality, manifest our desires into tangible stuff. Terribly unbiblical idea. I think I would probably just say to that, I don't believe that that is what Scotty or Andrew Peterson are talking about when they use the phrase co-creators. I think what's being drawn out there is the idea that when God has created the animals out of the dust of the earth, he brings the animals to Adam to see what Adam would name them. Now, interestingly, that is part of the kind of quest to find Adam a helper, which culminates in the creation of Eve. But it's very interesting that Adam is called to kind of participate in the ordering of the animals, and the naming of the animals becomes a sort of part of that work. So I'm not too worried that there's anything that's terribly unbiblical coming out of that concept.
I've always loved this illustration that the minister at my parents' church uses, where he talks about putting a picture up on a wall. If he just did it while the kids were asleep by himself, the picture would go up very quickly and very well and be fine. But because he loves his children and he wants them to be involved, he invites them to get involved in hanging up the picture with him, even though they'll make it 100 times more difficult. And I think that is very good at driving home to me the privilege of being able to curate and sub-create within God's creation.
Yeah, no, that's very good. Wonder if all the pictures in his house are slightly
wonky.
Slightly wonky.
We also have a comment from another friend of the show, Hell Yes. This is an excellent and very well thought through response to the "I'm a creative" comment. I have the same dislike of the phrase, but on a much simpler level. If you are such a creative, why are you describing yourself in such an unimaginative way?
Yes, I agree. And it's grammatically wrong.
On Behold the Comments episode 6, we had a comment from Micah and Eleanor Deegan saying, I also wonder if the reason we don't see so many existential crises upon crossing the threshold is because the reader wants there to be a greater/deeper reality. That's why we read fantasy after all. We don't read as much of Alan Moore's style because we kind of want a world we can fall in love with.
Yes, good point. And then we also had at Starbuck2 said, funny enough, C.S. Lewis does depict the disorientation of entering a new world in the first book of his space trilogy, Out of the Silent Planet. The reader is disoriented as the main character tries to resolve the landscape versus the plants versus the animals. As the story progresses, the reader gains more clarity as the protagonist understands more and more about the alien planet. I imagine C.S. Lewis had purpose behind his choice to make Narnia familiar and to make Malacandra, the planet from Out of the Silent Planet, alien. I think Alan Moore didn't give Lewis enough credits. And then AZ Larson said, Lewis's space trilogy is the grown-up fairy tale, not quite as polished as Narnia, but I loved them as well, and having recently reread them, feel they could actually be a cool Christian horror series/movie/franchise. The last act of Perelandra goes off the walls, and sense of cosmic dread from Out of the Silent Planet have some real potential.
Is C.S. Lewis able to create something that's filmable after all?
Well, yes. I mean, certainly the final book, which is That Hideous Strength, that probably feels like the most prescient book in regard to some of the technological advancements and the post-humanism that we are currently undergoing, experiencing, and is abroad in the culture.
I also just want to thank Rogue Horses, Andrew Cannell, and AZ Larson for their comments on anime to watch, as we were talking about anime in the last Behold the Comments and wanting to try some more out. Thank you for that.
Very good. We haven't had time to do what you've been watching, so we'll put that in the comments. You tell us what you've been watching, and then we'll have a think about that next time. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Please do remember that media consumption is optional. You are under no obligation to watch anything by Christopher Nolan, Patrick Tommaso, the Ghostbusters remake, or anything else that's been mentioned in this episode. I'm Reformed Mythologist Nate Morgan Locke. I'm glad you were here.